Pique that piques! Pique that piques! Pique that piques!
It never gets old. Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, Brian Davis joining us. Dave, what's up?
Hey, not much, Jeff. I'm just anxious to see if Cam gets the big award tonight.
Ah, that's right. That's right. Brian, what's going on? We'll keep you up to date with that, folks, by the way. Brian, what's up?
Oh, you know what? I kind of feel that way with Dave. That's one of the highlights of my weekend, since that's the biggest thing for the weekend for me, because the Steelers don't have anybody up for the Hall of Fame. Yeah. So it's, we're riding on Cam, and he's deserved this for a long time. So Walter Payton, Man of the Year, we're pulling for him. I'm feeling great, guys. This is I'm like Dave always says, I'm going to steal his line. I'm with my buddies on a Thursday night, and it's just not two of them. There's so many of them that will be coming in the live chat, and we're getting ready for a Super Bowl this weekend. And it's not the Eagles, it's not the Chiefs, it's Javon versus Juju for me.
There you go. We'll talk about the Super Bowl for sure. Before we have an announcement to make, last week we said how, Vox Media is not very nice, and so they cut the podcast platform. We're going to keep going, and we didn't tell you what the new name's going to be, and so we decided we were to do that this week. We are not leaving far from our current name. Behind the Steel Curtain Podcast Network is what we've always gone with. Brian, why don't you do it since you're the podcast guy? Well, why don't you tell everyone what our new name is going to be?
All right, we're going to do this. And when Dave brings up the logo, I say we drop out for a second so everybody can see it full.
Well we'll get that one first.
We'll get it.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So here we go. We've been known as Behind the Steel Curtain, and we have for a long time, a lot of people have just called us, hey, it's the Steel Curtain guys. So we are Steel Curtain Network.
There it is.
Oh my gosh, I'm not joking. I've already recorded Let's Ride for Friday. I said the name of the show, the new network and stuff, and I said this is just, it's so anticlimactic, and it's such a sad trombone, womp womp womp, because it's like, oh, Behind the Steel Curtain Network turns to Steel Curtain Network. New logo and everything, and believe it or not, that logo came from one of my Ride or Die crew. Actually lives across the pond. So I'm not going to share his name unless he doesn't want to have his name shared, but a big shout out to that gentleman who did it pro bono and volunteered his efforts when he heard about Vox dropping us and stuff. So pretty cool stuff. I'm excited for this new venture. Dave, do you have any words on that before we move on with the show?
No, we also started a new Twitter. I will be getting something up there to say exactly where we were. I've had it for a little while, getting the logos and stuff on there. I'm going to be probably even during the show, I will do something here to actually change our bio. I just said announcement coming. And then it's Steel Curtain Network is what it says. If you do it, it's at Steel C Network. You can't spell them all because there's not enough letters, hence why my Twitter is what it is. We'll put that at some point here at the bottom here for you to, if you search for the whole name, you'll find it. We'll tweet something out from there. Jeff will share it. I'll share it. I don't know if Bat will share it or not. We'll share it from the BTSC account so people can start following there. We'll just kind of give any updates, and we'll make sure the podcasts are going to be on there.
Yeah, and so you'll notice that the YouTube feed, the channel will change its name. It'll change its logo as well. And so don't be shocked. Like, you're not going to have to subscribe to anything else. It's just going to change. That's all. Yeah. Brian, any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, we're going to have an alternate one too, like the Penguins do. It's not going to be as bad as Robo Penguin. So we're going to have a cool alternate one too that we're going to have in different places. We are also not going to be like the Pirates, who back in the 90s had like 17 different hats and 17 different logos. So we're not doing that, but it's going to be really cool. This gentleman that put this together, he put individual logos for individual shows, and they're pretty awesome too. So
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Isaac Aguilera, who gave us $5. So generous. Thank you very much. He's one of the OG listeners, viewers on our YouTube channel. He said, Jeff, I heard you guys are going back to Blog Talk Radio. Should I invest in a surround sound so I can hear you guys? No, Isaac. We're not
that's
going
a joke.
back to Blog Talk Radio. But hey, if you are a Blog Talk Radio OG, then you know how far we've come. We've
tell you
come
what
a
we're gonna
heck
do.
of a long way.
I can do this. I can do this for our final BTSC preview. Even though we call ourselves that, I'm going to get a clip from us from the Blog Talk days so we could play it on this show.
Oh god!
How would we be able to hear it?
It's just gonna be like Steelers. Brian, what do you think?
You know what actually sounds better? You know what sounds better?
Pick it up, Pickens! Pick it up, Pickens!
Always
Pick it up,
sounds better.
Pickens!
That comes through with better audio.
Is that your ringtone yet, Jeff?
No, my phone never rings. It just vibrates. I hate ringtones. But no,
Great ringtone.
I remember sitting in my garage doing on my phone. I had a little headset and everything because Blog Talk Radio days, that was old school, man. Like you had to just call into a number, and then we had callers. I'm actually looking into. I think there's Spotify Live is a way to actually have people call in and interact. I'm really going to look into that. I think that would be a lot of fun to have people be able to call in. I need to know if it's a desktop or only a cell phone thing, but I do miss the callers from Blog Talk. Well, not all the callers. Brian and I had to censor some way back when.
Oh, wow. Man.
Anyways, enough of that stuff. Welcome to the Steel Curtain Network, and you're going to hear that from all our podcasts in the coming weeks as we gear up for that launch on March 1st. So let's talk about the Steelers. So the big news this week was Brian Flores leaving, and I think a lot of people are really, it's just no one really knows what to think. Some people just say it's not a big deal, and it wasn't expected that he was going to stay very long. Some people say this is a big deal. Brian, which side of the docket are you on?
It's not a big deal. I like a lot of the things that he helped put his finger on last year, but I believe that a lot of people are forgetting that Terrell Austin is also the defensive coordinator, and a lot of people forget about that. So, I think when you've got a defense that was together last year, especially in the second half of the season, looking very good. I don't think that it is just one gentleman that put that whole thing together. I think he was a contributor, but he was not the ringmaster. And that is Terrell Austin. So they are still going to keep his imprint in there, but he was not doing defensive game plans. So for that, I would have loved to have kept him, but this is not going to kill this team.
Okay. Dave, what are your thoughts on Flores?
Seattle has 2 losses. No, I'm sorry. I'm setting up Twitter stuff and listening to Brian. I'm kind of the same deal. It's only going to be as big of a deal as what you kind of decide to make of it. There's one end of the spectrum of, oh, look, Brian Flores came in and took the Steelers run defense. It was so low and they're now, top 10. Chris Carter was talking about that. But I'm like, what was that Brian Flores? Was it not? They improved their pass defense as well, but at the same time, was Brian Flores going to come in and really be able to work some magic with Devin Bush? No, but who's to say that anyone could do that? So to me, anytime you have a great coach, it's great to have a great coach. It's great to have a number of great coaches. So losing a great coach is never a good thing. But at the same time, the Steelers still have other great coaches. Now, some people are going to throw a fit that would actually go out on a limb and say that. But he will be missed. He gave a lot of input in a lot of places. So when you have a good coach that's not there, you can miss it. But at the same time, 11 guys still have to go out on the field and get the job done. So, we'll see what the Steelers coaching staff can then do without Coach Flores. It was a bonus to have Coach Flores this past year. He never should have had to take a job that was less than a coordinator. So the fact that the Steelers had him for 1 year, you should just look at it as bonus time.
I think that if I'm being 100% honest here, no one knows. The beat writers don't know. We don't know. We don't know if he was game planning, if he wasn't game planning. We don't know if he had an impact in the locker room or if he was kind of away from the team most of them. We don't know because we're not there. I don't think we'll really understand the impact of Brian Flores until next season.
Yeah.
And that's just because, well, if things don't look the same, then maybe he left his mark and it was missed, or maybe it doesn't look any different. And you're wondering, well, was Brian Flores even an impact? I don't think we can really gauge what this loss means for the Steelers right now. I will tell you where I am concerned, and this is something I spoke about on other podcasts, is that you look at, and I know Blaine Stewart leaving is not a big deal. He was an assistant wide receivers coach, and he's going to WVU, where his dad once coached. I get it. But he's a coach that was on the coaching staff roster, if you want to call it that. That is now gone. Brian Flores is now gone. They went from 18 to 16. I'm sorry, guys. They got to hire some coaches. Like, let's get some more coaches in there. You have a 90-man offseason roster and only 16 coaches. I get the whole we want a close-knit family. I get the whole we want to keep it close. I just don't understand the need. It feels like a need either by Tomlin or Art Rooney to want to keep it small. Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. You look at other coaching staffs across the NFL, and if I'm not mistaken, the Steelers have the lowest amount of coaches. And that, come on.
They were tied with the Raiders before 2020, going into 2020 with 18.
Okay.
So yeah.
We saw this last year, though, Jeff, to make you feel better, that they didn't mind bringing assistants in a little bit later, just like they did not mind bringing in other guys to help the front office, like a Sheldon White and these other guys to go ahead and bring in. I mean, gosh, they hired their general manager and they still brought in Andy Weidel too. So they added to the front office. I would think that, with some of the assistant coaches that they brought in last year, and I don't have names, but I don't think it's way too late, because remember, Brian Flores did not come in until late February or late March. I can't remember which one it was, but it wasn't right away.
Who was it? Okay, say that one more time.
Brian Flores did not come in until
because that was going to be my answer as well. Brian Flores,
think it was late February.
It was February 19th. I just looked it up, and that's why I didn't catch what you were saying.
We were at halftime of an elementary school basketball game. The news broke, and Dave and I are on the bench at halftime typing on our phones.
trying to get the article out as fast as we could. I think Brian's really onto something, because once again, I hate to just continue to agree with bad, because it doesn't make for much fun viewing and listening pleasure. But Jeff didn't even turn it over to me, but I'm just going with it. That if the Steelers, I think it would be wise for them to have both a senior offensive assistant and senior defensive assistant. And the best way to do that is what they did last year. You wait to see people that would be in line for a coordinator position that don't get one, and say, hey, it's not a coordinator, but we'll do this. You can throw names out there all you want. It could be someone who was a coordinator and parted ways with their team, or, to say it the way it really is, got fired or something like that, that the Steelers could then have. That ultimately, if you're trying to reach above their, I don't want to put it in 2 a.m. terms for Brian, but I guess I could. But if you're trying to reach above the goal of what you should have for a position like that, sometimes the best way to find it is to say, hey, who was in those pool of guys that should have been a coordinator, and let's see if we can get them to be our special assistants for each side of the ball. That's the two positions I would like to see them add. I would just like to have that for both sides. And I know you say, well, what about the linebackers? Well, the Steelers, they had an assistant outside linebacker coach. They have an inside linebacker coach. They wouldn't have to address that position specifically. But if you bring in another assistant, that's a senior defensive assistant that could just help with that overall.
I'm fine with them. If they want to roll into the regular season with 16, I want to know, and this is something Sherry Richards brought up in our live chat from Facebook, and that is whatever happened to the veterans coming back. Remember the veterans used to always come out to training camp and a mini camp, and you'd see Hines Ward working with the receivers. Do that. Like do something like that when your roster is at its maximum volume and the highest number of players, 90, at these workouts. And bring back some veterans, that Ike Taylor is actually a part of the scouting department now. And so go ahead, Brian.
And he was there along with Hines. They were called coaching interns.
Right. Get some coaching interns. Where's Big Play Willie Gay? I think he's actually coaching somewhere. But get him to come back and help in some capacity. Some of these guys that are, oh gosh, it'd be great to have Troy come back just to help out at training camp or something like that. He never would, but he never would. But it was still it's a pipe dream. I think that it's one of those things where it just doesn't add up to me. It really doesn't. And maybe Dave, you're on the right track, and Brian, you had some good points in terms of having the senior assistants, but it just 16 is not a big number for an NFL organization.
Well, and you said about the players coming back. Remember, 2020 training camp and 2021 training camp kind of messed with that a lot when they weren't even allowed to be at St. Vincent. All the COVID protocols that made it tough for guys to come back. There was some last year, if I do recall, that at least could come and visit. But I mean, the Steelers, just to get approval to go back, they still had to implement a plan. I think there's going to be more freedom this year. Hopefully, that's something that they can do. But just. Can you have too many coaches? Yes, you can. Are the Steelers anywhere close to approaching that? No, they are not.
Brian, any last thoughts on the coaching staff?
It just has to be done. You need more cooks in the kitchen when it comes to something like this, especially at Latrobe. You need that help because this has become a highly specialized league, a highly specialized business. Everybody you can't just have one guy in a room. Like if it's the linebackers room, you have a couple guys, but now you lost Brian Flores out of that linebacking room. You need to have more people because more people need more players need more attention.
Yeah. Okay, I want to bring up another topic. This is something that our Steelers Update podcast that runs at 4:30 a.m. every day. I talked about this. A lot of people are bringing up Super Bowl 45, and I'm not talking about Super Bowl 45. That you'll see where I'm going with this. I've actually never gone back and watched Super Bowl 45 again, ever.
Me neither.
I can't.
I can't do it.
I've seen like the little clips and everything from the Mendenhall fumble to the final pass that goes through Wallace's hands. Like I just can't.
I want to forget.
I just can't get. The question is there any other game for you that you're just like, I can't watch that game again for whatever reason? Brian, we'll throw it to you first. You're a wealth of knowledge.
No,
really.
I watched Super Bowl 30 a lot also.
I haven't seen that one since. Yeah.
And it's not torturing myself because, and Kevin and I talk about both of these games on Here We Go, the Steelers show. Check that out tomorrow. And it's actually a really interesting show. We take all 8 Super Bowls and do some what ifs. And we talk about the Mendenhall fumble. But when we talk about Super Bowl 45, one of the biggest things happened in the AFC Championship game, and that was losing Marquise Pouncey. And a lot of people forget about that. We also talk about the Mendenhall fumble. There's Kevin, who's a coach, saying that was a perfect tackle. There's not a lot of guys that are going to actually hold on to that ball. But that's not what we're talking about here. What I'm really talking about is I like to go back and think about, all right, what if they would have just done this here? What if this would have happened? One of the biggest things from Super Bowl 30 is a lot of people forget, and you guys are always going to give me heck about the Neil O'Donnell apology.
Oh,
but on this show, if number 89 Ernie Mills does not get hurt in that game, this is a completely different Super Bowl, and we're talking about a completely the Steeler history changes.
Good.
If Ernie Mills does not get hurt in that game.
All right, Dave, is there any game that you haven't watched? I know you said Super Bowl 45. Is there another one?
Yeah, I'm not watching the 2017 divisional round playoff game. I was there. I've never watched it on TV.
The Hall of Notes game.
Yeah, that's why I don't know I don't remember that part of it because I don't pay attention to that. But
Paul wasn't even there, Jeff. Leave Daryl alone. He wasn't even there.
I was going to say, do you guys want to know who won Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year?
I can tell you. I can tell you right now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Offense was Justin Jefferson. Nick Bosa.
It was defense. Yep. Hey, it's a live show. Might as well say it.
Might as well, yeah, sure. You know what game I've never watched in its entirety? I've seen the clips before, but I've not. The Jesse James caught that ball game. I have no interest in watching that and how that played out. I think that's one of the games.
I watched that a ton just to dissect the play.
Well, I've seen that play because we had to write an article for SB Nation. It was called you could pick a what if moment, and obviously Brian just went through a bunch, but I did the entire thing about what if Juju Smith-Schuster would have just stepped out of bounds. I actually went back and watched the play. Remember, there's that big catch and run down the sideline, and he cuts it inside. And instead of just going out of bounds and saving a timeout, and the Steelers have to hurry up, and it would have changed. It was actually a really interesting take. I think a lot of people enjoyed it. People also forget, though, that Ben threw a pick after that.
Yeah, that was the problem.
No, who was the targeted receiver? Who was the targeted receiver?
Play. It was Eli Rogers.
Yes, Eli Rogers.
But it wasn't the next play. They ran another quick out for 1 yard, and then they did that. And I do you ever kick yourself? Have those moments where you just kick yourself as a fan? You kick yourself as a fan, and you're like, because at first you're like, are they calling Jesse James down? Or are they going to move it all the way back to the 10 where the play was run and all that stuff? I remember in that moment watching that game actually saying to myself, did they just score too quickly and give Tom Brady too much time? And when that was overturned, I'm like, just don't let them touch the ball again. And dagnabbit, they threw the interception.
You weren't there, were you, Dave?
I wasn't there.
You weren't at the game. Okay.
No, I wasn't at that.
Would that have been in your end zone?
I'm thinking of going back to it because they were moving towards the left side of the screen, correct? That would have been towards my end zone. Yes.
Oh, that would have been a gut punch. Brian, go ahead.
I came up with one, and you guys are going to definitely agree with me on this one. December 4th, 2017, Ryan Shazier. Cannot watch that game.
Yeah, that would be another one.
Yep.
That's
a good
freaking
one,
field, man. Can we just implode that stadium? Nothing good happens there.
Could we just kick the Bengals out of the whole NFL?
I don't care about the Bengals. Can we just implode that?
Make them play in Canton.
And then let them play. That stadium is cursed. I swear that stadium's cursed. The worst injuries of my recent memory have happened on that field. Whether it's Shazier, Antonio Brown laying there unconscious. You talk about Tua, and then we all know DeMar Hamlin. It all happened on that freaking field. Just implode the stadium. I'll tell you one I haven't seen. And Paul Kern on Facebook, he brings it up. Tennessee, Pittsburgh, AFC divisional round 2002. That was the Nedney game. The Joe Nedney, where Dwayne Washington comes around the edge. He gets called for roughing the kicker, and they get another stab at it. That was the game. Bill Cowher was so pissed. I want to say that they beat the Browns. They beat the Browns. That was the Chris Fumatu-Mafala snow game at Heinz Field. I want to say that was a Sunday, and then they made the Steelers travel to Tennessee and play on Saturday, and he was livid that the NFL did that. Anyways, well, Dave, were you going to say something about that game?
I have only ever seen the acting job and the subsequent field goal of that game.
Oh, you didn't watch that? That was a great game.
No. I was getting married that summer, and my wife scheduled something for us to do. And she said, you can't miss that. It's just a football game. She can't even begin to imagine what happened. Now she's like, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you still married me.
Brian ain't walking down that aisle.
But I mean, it was, and the thing is because I was coaching it, that time of year was coaching track. So we had to work around my coaching schedule and everything else. And she had something planned for us, but I listened on the radio and I got back just in time to watch those technically only one of them was an actual play because the other one was considered no play.
Right.
And that's all I saw of that game, and I would not watch the highlights or rewatch it.
That game, and Paul's saying it in the live chat right now, it was physical, and that was classic. Eddie George running back. It was a good game, except for the way Steelers got hosed in the end. Brian, what do you think?
I watch all this stuff because of the BTSC DeLorean, and I kind of enjoy going back in time. I watch a whole heck of a lot more of the wins, but I think losses shape them. That game, in fact, I might have to mute myself just because I've just given Joe Nedney. Well, I gave it back then. I gave him a middle name. It's I think you could guess the middle name I gave him because Joe blanking Nedney. And I don't want an E put on our show for explicit, so I can't say it. But no, I mean, that was what people don't understand. Cower iced him too.
Yeah.
And he missed it. And then I think that was his third kick. That's what's amazing. He had 3 kicks there. It was the whole thing was just ridiculous.
Yeah, obviously, the losses are going to be tough to watch again. And even a game like in 2017, you mentioned with Shazier. But what are you laughing at?
Bernardo says he'll never watch that game, that Super Bowl that the Bengals won. Oh, right. You can watch every game.
Yeah. The 1994 AFC Championship game would be another tough one to watch. At Three River Stadium, Stan Humphries and the Chargers coming in.
I just watched.
Steelers were the far better team in that game. That was a gut punch, but there was a lot of AFC Championship gut punches back in those days.
I went to so many of them.
I know that you were there. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk a little Super Bowl here. Let's talk a little Super Bowl. I want to know your rooting interest in this game, and no, you can't say like what I tell my kids, whoever I bet on. You gotta have an actual rooting interest. Brian, who you pulling for in this game? Chiefs, Eagles.
Well, it's definitely not the halftime show. It's definitely
It'll be
not
entertaining.
Rihanna.
They're always entertaining.
I don't like Rihanna. I'll take Beyonce any day over Rihanna.
You don't like Riri?
Nope, not at all. No, she's not coming under my umbrella. So this one's kind of tough. So I kind of made the mention at the beginning of the show that it's Javon versus Juju for me, Hargrove and Smith-Schuster. Those are the guys. I am fine with either one of those guys winning a Super Bowl. I think it would be fantastic for both of them because I hold them. They're former Steelers that I hold in high regard. I have a hard time with the Philadelphia Eagles. I rooted hard for the Philadelphia Eagles for 2 reasons. 1, I hate the Patriots. 2, as much as I love Debo, I didn't want him winning that ring. Right after I didn't like the way that ended that year. If he was on another team, possibly, but just happening at right after he left the Steelers, after he was cut by the Steelers, but forced the cut. We're not going to get into all that. I had a root for Philadelphia. And when you grow up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in the late 70s, early 80s, you were taught that Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are basically, even though they share the same Keystone State, they're not in the same state. They're in 2 different worlds. And we watched a lot of Pirate games because there was only 3 networks. You got ABC, NBC. There was no Fox yet, and CBS. And the local WJAC, the local station at the time, they had the Pittsburgh Pirates network, and they played every away game. And then every once in a while you got a home game, but you were listening to them on the radio. And Pete Rose had just come over, and we hated Pete Rose. He was a Philadelphia Philly. He was never a Cincinnati Red to me. He was a Philadelphia Philly. And as much as I loved Michael Jack Schmidt, he was the bad guy because he was a Philly. The Eagles too. I rooted for the Raiders, and that was kind of sacrilegious back then, rooting for the Raiders in in the 1980 season, that was a bad thing because we just didn't like Philadelphia. And we still see it now. Philadelphia even though they've only won one of these things, they consider themselves better than Pittsburgh. And I just can't do it. And look, I'm not a Mahomes guy. I hate Jackson Mahomes. I hate Brittany Mahomes, but Pat's fine. Patrick's fine. Patrick's mom seems nice. That's fine. I don't really hate them. I have a problem with Andy Reid, but that's just because of fantasy football and the Ryan Suckup thing. I'm still hate him from that because he cost the Steelers I think he's a wang in sheep's clothing, in walrus nice guy clothing. But all I'm gonna say is I guess I'm going Kansas City here, and I think what helps me in this to go for Kansas City is number 10's not there. Tyreek Hill's gone, so they're a lot more rootable, and I respect what Travis Kelce does, so I really like him as a player. So I get to wear red this weekend.
So, okay. So all that
TLDR Chiefs.
TLDR?
You don't know that one?
No.
Too long, didn't read.
No.
I had no idea for most of that which way you were ultimately going to go. I'm like, he's really building up the anticipation.
I did build it up.
Oh, yeah.
What about you, Dave? Where's your
Well,
rating?
first of all, halftime shows. Brian brought them up. I've watched one in like the last 15. And that one was, I'm pretty sure that was the one that was last year. That was one with Snoop Dogg, right?
That was fun.
And all them. I watched that one for one reason. I wanted to see if Tupac came back. That's why I watched that halftime show.
You want to see him rise from the dead?
No, just come back to show that he wasn't really dead.
Oh, so he's been in hiding all these years.
Yeah, that's why he changed his name. That's why
he
changed his name right before he died to I can't remember what it was. The guy that faked his own death and came back and killed all his enemies. Yeah.
And I'm too long. I'm TLDR.
I'm just saying. I was like, they said this will be the best Super Bowl halftime show ever. I'm like, they're going to bring back Tupac because California love it and everything. I'm like, that would be great, but of course I enjoyed it because of the old school hip hop. But that was a joke. Thanks for getting it about the whole Tupac thing. So as for the game, my daughter asked me this question and my father asked me this question because my father will come and watch the game with me. And I said, I don't really know for sure because chances are I'll probably change who I'm rooting for as the game goes on. And I've done that before in the Super Bowl where based on how the game's playing out, I'm like, you know what? I really would not want to see this team win. But I have a problem with Philly because of my experiences with their fans as a whole at games that I've been at against the Eagles. It was not the Steelers, but when I used to go to just NFL games in general, But yet I know a lot of Philly fans individually that aren't like that. So like our next door neighbors here are actually Eagles fans. I'm like, for them, it would, for my neighbors, it would be pretty cool if they could experience a Super Bowl victory or something like that. So I was leaning that way, and I just don't know. Javon Hargrave loved him with the Steelers. No hard feelings when he left. I understood the Steelers offered him a contract still, but still couldn't compete with what the Eagles did. So I'd go for it. I'll probably start off that way and probably change my mind partway through the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. I honestly will just.
You said we weren't allowed to say that.
I never said that. I said don't say that who you're betting for.
Oh, you're betting for. Yeah, I really don't.
If you put money on, I'll place a couple.
I want to watch an exciting game, and I'm okay if it's defense exciting, unlike the one that Jeff despised because it was so low scoring.
I'd like some offense at some
point.
I mean, it can be both. It can be both. That is a possibility. Well, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Because someone brought this up in the live chat. Does the structure of the team or the way they built their team come into play at all? Because someone said, you could really respect how what the Eagles are doing and building, and how, they build it through the trenches. They're, building a full deep roster, things like that.
Did
Do
they
you
build
really
their
care what
teams
about that?
differently? I mean, Philly made some moves. It wasn't like they didn't have any
Yeah,
free agent.
it's not like it
acquisitions.
wasn't just through the draft or anything, but I mean,
Right.
they invested heavily in the trenches. They really focused on offensive and defensive line, which I am hoping that was due to one Andy Weidel. You say Weidel, I say Weidel. Then that he can bring the same thing to Pittsburgh.
Brian, thoughts?
TLDR.
He was waiting for it.
I like the Andy Weidel, the fact that he brought that up. That's really a good thing. As far as these teams, you're not seeing 1979 anymore, with the Pittsburgh Steelers being the only homegrown team to win a Super Bowl. That's never, ever going to happen again, and it's impossible. It's really interesting to see how these teams have been built. I respect how both of these teams have been built, how they brought some guys in as cast-offs and have done really well with them. So as far as the right teams are in the Super Bowl. They really are. And I can say that. And the Bengals weren't the right team to be in the Super Bowl. They really weren't. It's really the Chiefs, it's the Eagles, and you're going to see two of the best teams out there. And this is the best matchup you can hope for. And if you go with the Brian Anthony Davis model, you're just happy that this is a matchup that we've never seen before. I didn't want Chiefs and 49ers. We have seen it. I definitely didn't want Bengals 49ers because we saw it twice. So with the Eagles getting in there, you're like, okay, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's going to be hopefully just a good game. And I like watching it. And I'm anxious to see what Cam Hayward's commercial is in terms of the second half. I saw the teaser for it where he and Aiden Hutchinson are dressed as bellboys in the middle of a hotel hallway, and they're knocking on a door saying housekeeping. I'm like, oh boy, where is this going to go? So the NFL always tends to have a couple good commercials. So I'll look for Big Cam there in the big game. Let's do predictions real quick. Doesn't have to go into detail. I'm sure you all will, but let's just say, who do you think is going to win the game, Brian?
I'm going with actually the Philadelphia Eagles 28, Chiefs 20.
Oh, okay. Dave?
I'm going to go Eagles 34-31.
Okay, I'm going to go Eagles as well. I'm going to go with the Eagles, though, 37 to no. 34. Did you say 34-31, Dave?
Yeah.
34-30 came to mind. I think it's going to be more. I think it's going to start out lower scoring, and then it's going to ratchet up by the end of the halftime. And once Rihanna leaves the field, it'll be better. So, all right. Hey, what was the best halftime show that you all can remember? Brian, we'll start with you. You have a great memory for that type of stuff.
So you could look at a whole lot of stuff here, because for the longest time they were going with older acts, and Super Bowl 43 with Bruce Springsteen was actually really good. The Rolling Stones in Super Bowl 40 wasn't. I will also, if I'm looking at a newer artist, I've got to say Bruno Mars. I think he's fantastic.
Very good.
And he really did a great job on the big stage.
Dave, you probably don't watch, but
I don't. Well, not anymore. It's because it's a fantastic time to put your kids to bed because it's extended halftime. They get to watch the first half of the Super Bowl, then go to bed. So mainly any of them would be watching them on replay. And because my daughter has watched it on replay because she's a fan, I can watch with her and enjoy the Michael Jackson Super Bowl, which was basically the first one that was the big halftime show.
And that was a big one. Brian Salvatore says Prince. I forgot about that one. Yeah. And that was in the rain in Miami. And they had the purple lights in the rain coming down, and he's singing Purple Rain. I'm like, okay, this is great.
The most memorable with the Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson. I didn't even see it. I wasn't even watching.
I wasn't paying attention.
No,
my dad caught it. Bad Dad was like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "What?" Because I was like eating chicken wing. I look up and we're saying like,
Yeah.
I was watching with my parents.
All right, gentlemen. I know you all have trivia. Brian, do you have trivia?
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to one of our favorite games, because when I talk about my good partner, KT Smith, Kevin Thatcher Smith, his name was Cliff Harris is still a punk on. That was his nom de plume for BTSC back in the day when he first came on. And I just found out he was on a lot longer than we ever knew, because he was in days before Jeff Hartman on fan pages, which I didn't know about. So we were talking about this certain game, and Super Bowl 10 is where Cliff Harris did the stupid thing by patting Roy Girella, who was one of the worst Steelers kickers in history, but he stayed around a whole lot longer than he would have in this era. So he misses a kick. Jack Lambert goes absolutely crazy after that. After he spikes him, and in this day, he's getting kicked out. So he spikes him, and after that goes nuts. How many tackles did Jack Lambert end up with in that game?
Didn't he end up? It was double digits.
Yes.
I want to say it was like 15.
You're close, Dave.
I'll go 16.
14.
Oh, I went the wrong direction. Come
Now,
on.
in that same game, a Steelers player ended up with a whole bunch of sacks.
Yep.
In that game. And if Dave knows who the guy is, then we'll find out the number. But of course, sacks weren't recorded. It was not an official stat. So it is not. I don't know if they're changing the Super Bowl stat book now to say that this gentleman had that many sacks. But Jeff, it seems like Dave knows it. Jeff, I'm going to throw to you first. Do you know what member of the Steelers defense had a bunch of sacks, and how many were they in that game?
LC?
It was LC.
It was LC.
LC Greenwood. And was it 4?
It was 4.
Yay.
Most in the Super Bowl.
Okay, so
it's going back retroactively because they kept sacks as team stats, but they didn't keep them as individual stats until 82, if I'm right. So, but like Pro Football Reference has gone back to 1960 and awarded them to players. So you can look up what they would have been. So, and that's the record, right, Brian?
Now,
yes. So go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, did I know that Dave, did you get a chance to read the section on that of Jim Wexell's book on the clock? That section
with LC?
LC.
Oh yeah.
Where Bill Nunn left him off his
list
he
on
left
purpose. He did not he would not get he didn't give him an award. He refused to put him on it was I don't want to mess up the name that we used to do, but it was basically
like the all courier team or something.
Yeah, it was for historically black colleges and universities. Right. He made it was like a first team all pro for that. He specifically left LC Greenwood off of it
because he was working for the Steelers as a scout, and so
no one else didn't want him.
when he put these players on the list, like he didn't want to put Mel Blount on, but there's no way he couldn't put Mel Blount on because Mel Blount was a phenom in college, and he couldn't leave him off. But he actually did that. It was like they're a self-made sleeper pick. They left him off intentionally. They went to his school and didn't even look at him so that no one else would, although they knew exactly what he was going to bring. And they ended up getting him in the late rounds, too. He wasn't a high draft pick, but they got him. And
it was up there.
Crazy.
And if I could go ahead and just throw one more thing, this is going to be really quick. You guys don't know the answer, so I'm going to throw this in here. So nobody knows what LC stands for. And if you were to ask LC what that stood for, do you know what he replied to a lot of people?
I don't know.
Lover cool.
Lover cool.
What was it actually? Do you know?
That it's never been disclosed.
Yeah.
Wow, that's weird. Very cool though. Good stuff.
Reminds me of ladies love ladies love Cool James.
Ladies love LL Cool J. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ladies love Cool James.
Yeah.
All right. Dave, your turn.
I
Trivia.
still
Go.
can't believe Elsie Greenwood is not in the Hall of Fame. That still bothers me.
Ryan.
And in case you're wondering, in 1969, he was a 10th round pick.
Weren't there just how many were there? 11? How many rounds were there?
Well, the Steelers had picks all the way through around 17.
Oh gosh!
But remember, that was the year before they had 17 and 70 because they did do like a joint draft. I can't remember how they did it back then. Anyway, here's an interesting little fun fact that I'm going to do as trivia that you guys have a chance at getting this. I'm looking over because I'm going to, sometime do an article once again reviewing, because Jeff already talked about on one of our Steelers Update podcasts, which if you haven't caught the Steelers Update podcast, great way to get news every morning, 5 to 7 minutes. Just been doing a great job with that. So make sure you're checking those out. But one of the things was about the Steelers are not going to have to worry about a 5th-year option this year, because the Steelers did not have a first-round draft pick in 2020 that they now have to worry about if they're going to give them their 5th-year option or not. And that's all because they traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick. So the Steelers acquired Minkah Fitzpatrick in September of 2019, and they gave up a first-round draft pick in 2020. They swapped the 4th and a 5th that same draft, and they swapped a 7th and a 6th the following year. If you go back and look at over this, who did the Dolphins take? They took an offensive lineman. They took Austin Jackson, who they are not expected to give the 5th-year option to.
Interesting.
So that's interesting to know. The Steelers, yes, they gave up they gained a 4th-round pick while giving up a 5th, and they were able to draft Kevin Dotson. While the Dolphins drafted Jason Strowbridge, who was on their practice squad this past year. So Steelers offensive guy didn't miss a snap. Dolphins get practice squad guy. The last swap was where the Steelers got Miami's 7th-round draft pick. In return, they gave them their 6th-round draft pick in 2021. The Steelers drafted Trey Norwood. The Miami Dolphins ended up trading that pick. And the player that was ultimately selected with the 207th overall pick in round 6 of 2021 is currently under contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who is that player?
Is it a reserve future contract guy?
I would assume it would be.
Well, Dave, you act like I know all of them. I don't know all of them.
No, it's not, which I'm afraid is going to give it away. It's not.
Oh.
Would it be?
He's under contract. So he's not a free agent.
Under contract.
Would it be Akello Witherspoon?
No.
That is incorrect because Akello Witherspoon was drafted way before 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was
That's
drafted
correct.
by San Francisco and then
Yeah.
went to Seattle and then to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You said defensive back?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, you didn't say a possession.
I didn't say a position at all, but he's on the Steelers roster, and it was actually the pick that was supposed to be the Steelers that got traded to Miami, and then Miami traded it.
Could not Larry. Is it Larry O?
It's not Larry.
No,
O.
he's
Larry
not
O
even
was
under.
drafted higher.
What about
He's not
another
under-
O?
Not under
What about
contract.
Gunnar O? Or was he drafted by the Patriots?
No, I'm pretty sure Gunnar O was undrafted.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank here. I don't know.
The pick was traded from the Miami Dolphins to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs then traded the pick to the New York Jets,
Arthur Millette.
who selected Jonathan Marshall,
The hell's Jonathan
defensive
Marshall?
lineman.
I don't know.
The
who Jonathan
Steelers'
Marshall is.
53-man roster for the final 2 games of the season after the Steelers had to put Chris Wormley on IR. And if you read my exit interviews, that was yesterday's.
It was I got
Jonathan
4
Marshall.
letters for you. TLDR.
So the player. So what I'm going to be ultimately looking at is looking. Yeah, Brian. I offended Brian so bad earlier in the show. He's just trying to get it back. But if you look at this trade and what the Steelers, you trade draft picks all the time. But what the Steelers did with their draft picks versus what happened to the draft picks they gave up. Now, it's not to say the Steelers would have taken those players, but what ultimately got taken, one of them's on the first rounder's probably not getting his 5th-year option. The 5th rounder ended up on the practice squad. Still in the NFL, can still have a good career. Guys end up on the practice squad and then have good careers all the time. And then the other player's actually on the Steelers now.
And think about the fact, if I could jump in, Dave, real quick, now that there's a trade with the Chicago Bears and they've got that 32nd pick, it's already been decided because every single mock draft has Siki Akia or whatever his name is for Baylor. I mean,
not all of them, because I've seen a couple drafts that had the Steelers take a defensive lineman in 17, and then they had to go somewhere else.
I get it.
All of them have, yeah.
It seems like most.
Yeah,
of them.
You're exactly right.
So that's good. I love those little. Dave loves to do those articles where how so and so turns into this.
Yeah, no, I do too.
Yep.
I'll never forget the Antonio Brown, the one that turned into Antonio Brown.
Yeah,
there you go.
I still like the one that turned into James Conner, that went from Kieran Fox to Calvin Beachum to James Conner.
It's what you should do. You should call it 6 Degrees of Kieran Fox.
There you go.
All right, let's do some final thoughts here. Brian, go ahead.
All right. We lost a giant in Pittsburgh sports today that a lot of you have no clue who this man is. 80-year-old Paul Martha passed away today. And if you're not familiar who he was, go ahead and look this guy up. He was arguably one of the best pit teams of all time. In 1963, he was an All-American. He was a number 1 pick of the Steelers in 1964. He was a halfback, also played on defense. He ended up with 15 interceptions for the Pittsburgh Steelers before Chuck Noll came in. And in the 1970 season, he ended up with the Denver Broncos because Chuck Noll cleaned a whole lot of house. He was probably one of the bigger stars for the Steelers back in the 1960s, but we don't know. I mean, even the ones who know a lot about the history of the Steelers don't know a lot about those guys in the 60s. But he did a lot afterwards. He became a lawyer. He was an executive for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He actually was instrumental in that as being not only a legal counsel, but being an executive on that 1991 team. He was with the DeBartolos, so he won Super Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers as well. He was also the guy that the NFL brought in to help mediate during the 57-day strike in 1982 that helped, because they were talking about canceling the season altogether. He was one of the guys that helped make sure that that did not happen. He's one of those guys that helped shape this team, not named Greenwood and Green and Bradshaw. He was one of those guys that is a part of this family that we just don't know that part of the family tree. So like we've always said, we said this when Charles Johnson died. Get to know who some of these players are that were black and gold in the past and were giants at a time, and they're not giants now. But now that they're being remembered in their death, they were great contributors. So let's not forget Paul Martha. Gone at 80. R.I.P.
All right, good stuff. Dave, final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts. Brian, you did a nice job. Great tribute. I'm going to leave it at that.
There you go. All right, folks, that does it for us on the Steel Curtain Network. That's right, new name in case you're joining us late. We'll be back next week for another Steelers preview, talk about the Super Bowl recap, all that good stuff. In the meantime, make sure you check out all of our shows wherever you get your podcasts. Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
All right, folks, we'll see you next week.
Everybody else gets a little tight.